You are tuning in to Access Live, a show about raising awareness, what's going on in the community, and to address the issues that impact youth and their families that have serious emotional and behavioral challenges. We are located at the Brookins Building at 1776 East Washington in Urbana, Illinois, and at the downtown location at 202 West Park Street.
And good afternoon, friends. You are tuned in to Access Live, a community education and engagement initiative of the Access Initiative. I'm Imani Bazzell, your host, and as we say every week, we are so grateful to Mother Nature and the weather, whatever it is she brings us. And today, I'm just happy, and I've been so happy for the past few weeks as the thermostat keeps climbing. I've been waiting for a few days in a row where it's at least 50 degrees at night, so, I don't plan anything, and then it freezes, so I think we're beyond that date. And I'm going to be looking around the community and see who's keeping their garden up and who's not. Don't make me call you out. Take all your silk and plastic flowers back in now. That's enough. And let's really hook up with Mother Nature and beautify our homes and communities. That does a lot when we feel that we are beautiful enough to have beauty around us. Well, for those of you who already got the note, today we are pleased and proud to have the police chief for the city of Champaign, Mr. Anthony Cobb, in the studio with us today to take your questions and comments. So I want to invite you now to give us a call at 359-9227. Are there things going on in the country that you'd like to hear a local law enforcement officer and leader speak to? Are there things happening in other places that might also be happening here that you'd like to have local conversation about? Give us a call, 359-9227. Hello, Chief.
Hi, how are you doing, Miss Imani?
Wonderful. Well, I think it's good to start at the beginning.
Okay.
Let's make sure our listening audience, while many people already know you, tell us your journey. How you end up sitting here as the chief of police? How'd that happen?
A lot has happened along the way. I've been very fortunate and very blessed in my career, in my life. I am a product of Champaign, Urbana. I grew up here. I had the pleasure of going through Champaign schools, Booker T. Washington Elementary School, Jefferson Middle School, Centennial High School. Left the community for a short time to go off to college, went off to the United States Military Academy at West Point. I did 1 year at prep school in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, 2 years at the academy, decided not to take an appointment. I came back into the community, did a semester at Parkland College, and was starting my first semester at University of Illinois when I got offered a position with the Urbana Police Department. I took the job, and from there, while starting my career in Urbana, I finished up my degree through Eastern Illinois University.
Oh, wonderful.
I went through the ranks at Urbana, started out as a community policing officer, and served Northwest Urbana for several years as a community police officer. Went from there to a school resource officer, and I moved into Urbana High School and Middle School and served there for several years. Coached football over there until I got promoted to become a sergeant on the police department, actually with sergeant and detective. And then from there, moved through the ranks as lieutenant in charge of patrol division, on to deputy chief, and then had the opportunity to come to Champaign in 2012.
And then Champaign poached you. Is that not the truth?
Champaign asked me to come back home.
That's called poaching.
That was a huge opportunity for me,
it was.
for my family, and actually even for our community as a whole. There were a lot of things that were going on within our community. And when I think of the Champaign-Urbana community, we are one community, two cities, but we're one community.
That fake Wright Street doesn't mean a lot to a lot of us.
I would agree, and it's definitely pretty evident when you look at the African-American community.
That's right. It crosses, yeah.
Exactly. It sort of goes right through the heart of it. You have African-Americans on both sides of Wright Street when you north of University. So it's never been something that we recognize
That's right.
within the black community. And growing up here, I still consider it to be home. So even though I went to Champaign, I'm still serving
That doesn't mean anything.
the entire community. Exactly.
Absolutely. That's a good attitude to have. So, did you think of doing other things? Did you think of having other professions when you were younger?
You know, I considered law enforcement early on, and it's funny because when I got into law enforcement, I never thought I would stick with it. I thought it would be a short career to some degree, something I was interested in. Believe it or not, I got into law enforcement thinking that law enforcement had a lot of biases.
Yeah.
From my upbringing, I was always taught by my grandfather that police, all they did was chase people down, beat them down, and took them to jail. And that was my thought, and that was my perception.
And that's how I grew up too.
Exactly, and a lot of us grew up that way. To my surprise, when I got into law enforcement, I had the opportunity to find that there was a lot of good professionals out in our community. Every now and then we run into some ignorance when it comes to cultural awareness and things of that nature. But I found there was a lot of men and women that truly cared, and they really wanted to help the citizens of our community. And that was eye-opening for me. And if I hadn't viewed it with my own eyes, I probably would still have the perception that my grandfather instilled in me, because I remember my first contact with law enforcement and seeing it. It was happened to be a time when Old Dunbar Court was still in existence. And I was about 16 years old, and I was sitting out there in the parking lot with some of my friends. My grandfather had gave me a deuce and a quarter as my first car.
Oh, no, he did.
Yeah, so I had the 1968 Buick Electra was my first car, and we're sitting out there and didn't have a lot of money then, so I took the speakers from my stereo and I wired it to the back of his car so you can hear the music. And we're sitting there listening, not bothering any issues, about 9 o'clock at night, and saw this brand new squad car pull up just short of the complex, and it stopped. And back in those days when Dunbar Court was there was an alley that ran between East Street and Dunbar Court and went all the way down the road mine. And I saw this officer come in, and he just came to the complex, didn't say anything to us, didn't bother us, but he just hid in the shadows. And while he was hiding in the shadows, I figured, what's going on? A few seconds later, you look down the alley and you see this black male just running. I mean, he just running. Back then, Carl Lewis was Billy Poppin. Billy Poppin,
right.
He's doing a Carl Lewis. Because he's moving, and behind him, about maybe 30, 40 yards, see another officer chasing after him. Both these officers happened to be white, and they were chasing after him. And one thing we recognized real quickly was the one who was chasing after him wasn't going to catch this guy. He was moving. He was far ahead, and so we started laughing, thinking it was funny, but we forgot about the guy in the shadows. And he came out of the shadows, and he just grabbed this guy by the back of his shoulder, took him to the ground, boom, jumped right on top of him. The other guy caught up with him, handcuffed him, and took him off to the car. And from that day, everything my grandfather told me about law enforcement was true. I saw a police officer chase someone down, they beat him down to the ground, and they took him to jail. Off my perspective, when I got on the police department, I really looked into that incident, saw what happened on that night, found out Urbana Police responded to a burglary in progress over on Ellis Drive.
Which means it was a black victim as well.
Exactly.
And that's the piece we forget.
And that's what they responded to. And when the officers got on scene to deal with that young man, he found it was easier to run from the police without the TV in his hand that he was bringing out the front door. So he dropped it in the front yard and took off running. They used enough force necessary to overcome his resistance as far as when he tackled him to the ground. I didn't see him pull out a nightstick or beat him down, but from my perception, I just saw him pile on top of him. But I'm sure they tried to stop police at the scene and it didn't work, and that's the reason why the tackling happened. But it changed my perception of when I had the opportunity to get all the information, and that doesn't happen often. So.
No, it doesn't. I can remember an incident a number of years ago. This was when my baby son, who's going to turn 24 this weekend.
Okay, congratulations.
On Mother's Day.
Congratulations,
when he was in high school at Central, he and a couple of his friends, so he always had the United Nations for Friends, you know. All my children have. But they always have, you know, their homies as well, right? So those are the ones who come over to the house and, you know, you try to get them all down doing their homework, you know. You'd be the Kool-Aid house, whatever. And they used to talk about law enforcement. But it was always about maybe we're the ones who could do it and make it what it's supposed to be. And one day, he and I were driving up probably University Avenue. It may have been, you know, after dark. And I got stopped by the police. And, you know, I knew to roll my window down, but not to get out of the car. And he came up and he said, you know, I was speeding. And my response was, no. Before he could say anything, I said, God, I was speeding, wasn't I? And he said, yes, ma'am, you were. And I said, I'm so, so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Because, you know, there's a part of University Avenue, there's a part of Springfield Avenue where you can go 35, but University Avenue, it's always 30. And sometimes I forget if I'm on Springfield or University. But I was still speeding because I was going over 30 because, you know, you try to inch up a little past it, right? So, I mean, I knew I was wrong. And so, you know, he took my license, looked me up and everything. But he was very, very nice.
Good.
And so my son and I started talking about, you know, his thoughts about law enforcement again. And when the officer came back, you know, he gave me back my license and he said, you know, I really appreciate the way you responded and the way you handled this. And I'm going to give you a warning. You know, I'm not going to give you a ticket. And, you know, I told him, you know, thank you so much. You know, I'm really going to be mindful of my accelerations. You know, we have to be safe for everyone. And he went on back to his vehicle. And as he was going back, my teenage son was saying, see, Mommy, that's why I want to be a police officer, because we have to have more officers like that.
That's great.
And it choked me up so much. I immediately got out of the car and went to the police officer who hadn't pulled off yet. And I told him what my son said.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And how important it is that we can have experiences like this, because black people didn't grow up with experiences like this.
I would agree.
And still today, that's not how we see the police. And so I wanted to tell him that you are a role model for police officers, and, you know, and I think I told him I would be in touch with Chief Finney.
Good.
To tell him my experience. And he said, you know, thank you. Yes, this is how relations with the public should be. And when your son is 18, I'm going to give you my card, and he can do a drive along with me or whatever.
Ride along,
ride along, yeah. So he didn't end up going in that direction.
That's okay, I understand.
But, you know, what a quandary. On the one hand, the African American community, in many ways, is at siege. We're under siege, right?
We have some issues,
so we're not just under siege in terms of crime and violence. We also equally feel under siege by law enforcement. And so that is really tricky. But a lot of us, because emotionally, I don't know that people articulate this, but it's in many black people's minds, not just here, but all over the country, it seems like an unbroken lane all the way from slavery and how the law was enforced on us, all the way through to modern day policing. I think in many of our minds, if we actually had that conversation, that's kind of what's going on. It's like authority, just the use and abuse of authority. I think we've been so traumatized by people in authority abusing us from the time we stepped on these shores. It's difficult to tease apart what's history and what's real to what may be happening now, that in some places there may be a clear continuum, but in others, as you've said, let's take another look. And so that's why I was proud of my son to be able to distinguish between fears and trauma brought on by law enforcement, but the real understanding that we in fact do need peace officers. We do need protection. Talk about that as a black man.
Yeah, we do need peace officers and we do need protection. Recognize police officers, we're public servants.
Yes.
And one of the things we try to emphasize and speak with our employees about, I know I speak quite a bit with the leadership team about it at Champaign Police Department, is what are we doing to humble ourselves and to serve our employees? And the reason why I emphasize to the leadership team to serve our employees, because our employees serve citizens.
Yes.
And if I can serve my employees and empower my employees, give them the resources, the training, the tools that they need in order to be successful, then I'm expecting them to have successful encounters with the public, humbling ourselves as police officers and serving our public. Recognize anyone who has a lot of power has a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
It goes with it. And my motto or my unwritten rule is I like to be able to lead or encourage people to lead without using my power. I want to influence. I want to be a catalyst. I want to evoke change. And a lot of times for law enforcement is change in negative behavior.
That's right.
But at the same token, if we can get that accomplished through free will, that is the best way. Because we want to correct it so it doesn't continue. And so we want...
Because there's a legacy. You didn't create it,
Right.
but you inherited it. So what will it be on your watch, right?
Exactly. My watch, and one of the legacies I'm working on is trying to be known for creating leaders. I do think we have a good organization at the Champaign Police Department. I think we have a lot of good leaders within the department, but we really need to work hard and to hone in our skills to make sure we're good servants to our citizens and being good examples to our citizens. There's a lot of things we still need to overcome, but there's a lot of things our community needs to overcome, and there's a lot of things that the community can do to assist law enforcement and assist our community at large. And when you look at violence that you started to talk about within our community, that's a huge thing concerning.
It's huge.
We just had a march on April 9th talking about the violence, and it came out of the Suits and Ties gentleman from Central and Centennial who put together the video and said, hey, we want to do something a little bit broader. And they had a march, and they partnered with the Black Greek around town, and they had a march that started at Douglas Park, and it went over to Mount Olive Baptist Church, where Reverend Thomas was kind enough to allow us to use his facilities. When we got there, we actually talked about some of the things that we're seeing in our community, and it's sad because when I was getting ready to ask me to speak at this rally, I started just going through my past speeches and what I've talked about and what has been my message. And every year since I've been chief of police in the city of Champaign.
And how long has it been now?
It's been a little more than 2 years now. And I've stepped forward and asked the community to step forward and partner with law enforcement to deal with the gun violence that we're seeing. And it's unfortunate. It's sad. We've been very fortunate as a community to only have lost one innocent. And when I mean innocent, I'm talking about the mother of two who was killed in Garden Hills in 2012, July 4th. That was an unfortunate tragedy that could have been avoided if we would have had guys found better ways to deal with their issues opposed to picking up arms and shooting at each other.
I know.
And that's sad, but at the same token, we dealt with the issues in June of last year with all the shots that were, bullets that were flying in our community, guys shooting at each other and hitting houses and cars and things of that nature.
And that was all happening in my neighborhood, by the way.
Exactly, and those are things that concerns me as a chief, that's concerned other chiefs in the community, in the sheriff's office, but those are things that are really happening in the African American community, because when we look at the people who are directly involved, the victims who have actually been shot or have been a victim of it, those are things that we're seeing that happening pretty much in predominantly black areas.
And, you know, I'm going to say as a black woman, I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed. This doesn't in any way let the police power off the hook, because we still have problems there. So it's not a question of but and. It's not this or that. It's this and that.
I agree.
And we as black adults, is that for us? Okay, we've got a caller.
Okay.
Hello, caller.
Well, good afternoon, Imani.
Well, hi, honey girl.
How are you?
Wonderful.
Is the capital today?
I think I heard you were in Springfield. You all, this is Miss Patricia Avery, who's the president of the Champaign County branch of the NAACP, giving us a call. So what's up in Springfield we should know about?
Well, you know, we're here. This is the NAACP lobby day, and we're just getting ready to go in and meet with our governor. We've met with the Speaker of the House. Well, we're here on a number of issues, especially when it comes down to Illinois school funding.
Get us some money, girl.
Senate Bill 16, so we're actually here in support of that bill. So I'm hoping that your listeners, if they want to get on the phone and call their legislators and ask them to support Senate Bill 16, because we know we cannot get enough funding into our schools.
So what does Senate Bill 16 say, babe? What is Senate Bill 16? What's it asking for?
Well, it sets up a formula to distribute education funding based on local districts' abilities to pay.
Instead of just property tax.
Instead of just property
Beautiful.
tax. And it includes considering the poverty level of the district by factoring in the low income population, and it adds greater weight to other special funding needs.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, I think it just distributes it balances the funding formula out a little. But the poor districts don't seem to get as much attention, so we really want to find a way to make that formula.
Yeah, it's just the right thing to do, and we're so happy we have the NAACP to stay on top of civic and public policy issues like that, because when we don't, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So when you base it on property value, that means the people who own the most expensive housing get the best education for their children, and there's something wrong with that picture.
That's absolutely correct. And so, we've heard that the disparity gap is just continuing to get larger and larger, and so is the education equality gap. I think we need to stay on top of it, because we have today here with us in the Capitol, we have a huge group of students, some from DuPage and a lot of students from Champaign, from Springfield. We'll have our students here tomorrow in Springfield from Champaign, but it was so refreshing to see the young people here advocating on their behalf. And so a lot of the students first time in the Capitol, but they're getting an education. They're actually seeing how things work and how bills are made and how these bills affect them at the community level. So it's an important education.
That is so fabulous, and it should be a part of every young person's education. Now, do you have a question or comment regarding local law enforcement or specifically to the chief?
Yeah, I understand we have a special guest in the house today.
Yes.
Chief Cobb. And just from the NAA's perspective, I just want to tell you that, our chief has been doing a fantastic job, but I do have to say that I told the chief the other day, because he's always been so accessible to the NAACP.
Yeah.
But the honeymoon is over, and we've seen some things that start to creep up in the community that we hadn't had to deal with early on in his administration. So, I just want the chief to know that I know that there's a number of things there's been a number of changes that have happened within the department. And so I would like the chief, I don't know, I can't hear what you all have discussed, but to talk about the changes that are going on within the department and how those changes are going to affect how his department polices a community,
Okay.
community police.
We'll make sure we talk about that right after the break. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I didn't know to ask. That's why we need you.
Well, and I just want to say that we really appreciate the chief has always been able. I've always been able to pick up the phone and call him when there has been some problems that have arisen, and he's gotten right on top of that, and we appreciate that. But we know he's got a tough job to do. But I am interested in, and the community might be interested in, how all of these new changes that are going on within the department are going to affect how they're policing our community.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for putting that in front of us, and thank you for your lobbying work in the Capitol. Chief Cobb, anything?
Okay.
Yep, thank you, Patricia, for the comments, and I definitely certainly will answer your question and speak with the community about that.
Thank you so much, honey.
And I'll have to call back and talk to Imani or get in touch.
Girl, you know you need to be in this studio. Don't make me tell you again.
No, I'm going to get there, because I know if I don't, she'll be on me. So
That's
I'll
right.
get there pretty soon.
Thank
We have a lot
you.
to talk about.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, and our good friends at that, we've got to take a pause for the cause, but stay right there. We've got some good discussion coming up. We'll be right back.
Access Live can be heard every Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. on WBCP 1580 AM in Champaign, Urbana. You can learn more about the Access Initiative by visiting their website at www.access-initiative2.org.
And we're back. This is your host for Access Live, Imani Bazzell, a community education and engagement arm of the Access Initiative. We thank our last caller, Champaign County Branch NAACP, Patricia Avery, for letting us know what's happening on NAACP Lobby Day in Springfield, and want to again thank our local branch for including young people in this wonderful educational experience. In the studio with us, we have the Chief of Police in Champaign, City of Champaign, Anthony Cobb, who is a son of Champaign, Urbana, and a son of North Champaign.
That is correct.
Who is our primary listening audience, though not exclusively. So, of course, many people already know you. But we want to give people a chance to know you even better.
Absolutely.
And let's have real talk. We're not
Okay.
afraid to have real talk. And I appreciate that about you. You're not ducking and dodging.
Now we're going to call it like it is.
Yes, we will. So, I was contacted earlier well, let's go back to Patricia since that's what's fresh.
Okay.
She wanted you to talk about changes that are taking place in the department and how we should anticipate those changes affecting us in the community. What was she talking about?
I've talked with Patricia quite a bit over the last couple of years, looking at the things that we're doing within the side of the department. One of the big things I did when I first got there was try to get a good overview and a good handle on where we were at as an organization. And then we started looking at one thing Champaign Police Department has always taken great pride in is having quality professional officers that are really well trained.
Yes.
So I tried to build upon that strength that we have, and we went to instituting a common training day where we do regular training on issues that are important to us as an organization. One of the things I really wanted to do is by getting back to the basics with my officers, going through reviewing our use of force protocols, review how we do a lot of our arrest tactics, how we do a lot of different things within the organization, but things that are important to us. We put together a training calendar and we went to that. So now we have regular training where we have a monthly topic and officers rotate off shift and they'll train on their regular duty shift to get the opportunity to get information that is important to us as an organization so that we continue to enhance and use best practices and the service that we provide to our citizens. That's one of the
Well, I
things.
think what I hear you describing is the same thing we ask for from our schools. Can there be regular, ongoing professional development for our teachers and other educators to make sure we are using best practices and make sure we're reaching all of the young people, and then everyone has an equitable chance to get an equitable and excellent education? And you're saying we also deserve equitable and excellence in law enforcement.
That is correct, and like I said, that was one of the big things we changed in the first part of 2013 that has gone really, really well for us as an organization. In addition to that, we've been talking about and we're in the process of implementing what we call use of force review at the onset of use of force. There are certain things, like if you look at Champaign Police Department, we had over 75,000 calls for service in 2013. Out of those 75,000 calls for
Oh,
services,
75,000.
yeah, we had more than I
Was
think about
some of
70
those just getting cats out of trees?
Some of them are just service calls, not necessarily cats out of tree. We leave that for the firemen.
Oh, that's right. That's them. They're the ones with the ladders.
But we are busy. I think it was 75,667, something like that was the number of calls we had. Out of that, we only had 195 instances where officers had to use force in dealing with the citizen. That is a very, very low percent.
That is.
Vast majority of the time, officers can generate voluntary compliance or resolve issues without having to use force. And so that's something our community should be proud of. our officers use a lot of discretion, and they
Yes.
try not to, and they want to handle things at the lowest possible level. But unfortunately, there are times when we do have to use force, and when those times come up, we truly want to make sure we scrutinize it as a police department to make sure we're instituting best practices, we're following policy procedures.
Best
and the law.
practices, and again, to make the public education analogy, just like our young people who need special education services, we say we want the least invasive
I would agree.
right, intervention for kids.
Yes.
So if there's any way we can have them in the general education classroom, we want that as much as possible. We want more pull out and push in than pushing them into separate rooms. So it's kind of the same concept. Least force, least intervention. Now that is going to lead us to one of the elephants in the room.
Okay.
And we know that elephant is tasers.
Okay.
Now I want to say two things about that. Well, probably more than two.
Okay.
So, just thinking about what you just said about the level of professional development that is happening on your watch. You will remember when the question of tasers for Champaign police officers came up years ago.
Okay.
And you probably remember the vigorous and what I would call excellent pushback, because I was a part of it, on the side of the community, predominantly the African American community, but not completely. There are many, many allies.
Right.
And one of the things that was very apparent that I don't know if we'll see this time around, if there is going to be this time around, there was a lot of defensiveness on the part of the police officers.
Okay.
When we had town halls, you know, there was almost this belligerence. Like, how dare we try to tell you how to run a police department and how to do your job. And I think I hear you saying you actually work for us and you want to be as transparent as possible. And so we actually do get to know and see what you're doing and question what you're proposing to do and challenge it if we think there's another way. So this question of tasers is of course coming up again because it's in front of the Urbana City Council, and the Urbana police are saying we'd like to have tasers. We're going to bring some other guests in a minute, but I know a lot of people are waiting to hear about this.
Okay.
So you just talked about the number of calls you get, and you've talked about the small number of times that you've actually been pushed to use force to settle a situation. So what many people in the community want to understand is, one, isn't there always a better way? And, you know, a lot of us feel as though every time there's a new toy don't mean you need the new toy. Right? So people feel that way about tasers. So given in our community, there is a disproportionately small number of your calls end up with the need for use of force. So honestly, brother man, I'm talking to you.
And I hear what you're
what
saying.
about this question of tasers?
Official position of the Champaign Police Department is we're still assessing and evaluating. Is that a tool that we want to introduce into our police department? If we do decide to go that route, we will have a conversation with our city council as well as our public about it.
That's right.
We owe that to the public to
That's
do it.
what
We're
we
not,
ask.
We're not going to put anything on our officers' belt without having a conversation about it to some degree. But we also need to recognize there's a term that my city council and a lot of people keep up with city politics know pretty well. It's called unserviceable. The number of officers that are not available to provide service to the citizens of Champaign. And recognize we got as high as 24% of our workforce at the Champaign Police Department been unserviceable. That's a huge number.
What does that mean?
What does that mean is basically it says you as an employer, how would you be able to function, your business be able to function if a fourth of your employees are not able to work for you for whatever reason?
Do you mean we're down that many employees?
We were down that far at one point in time.
Uh-huh.
And when I say down, that counts unserviceable, deals with any officer who's not available to put a uniform on
Yeah.
and go and provide duty, whether that be
Mm-hmm.
injury, duty or
Sure,
non-duty related,
gotcha.
whether it be military leave, family leave, whether it be they're on vacation, whether it be whatever, for whatever reason they're not available. And at one point in time, we were that high. We're generally higher than most departments our size. The generally average about 10%.
Okay.
We generally stay closer to around 20% in that neighborhood is generally where we're at with our unserviceable. That is a real number for me because it creates a lot of costs to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And when I look at the injuries that some of these officers are sustaining, these aren't the injuries where they get bumps and bruises and they're back to
Sure,
work
it's
in a
pretty
couple
serious.
weeks. We're talking, I got back injuries, we got shoulders, we got knees, we got all type of things happening where guys are going to be out 6 months, 9 months, or a year or more.
And we think that's problematic.
Mhm.
And it's another question entirely whether the answer to not enough police officers is now we're faced with having to injure community. Since police officers are injured, we're going to have to injure citizens more. So,
No,
but I'm just saying
I
a
don't
lot
think
of
that's the
people
case, but I think people need-
people can hear it that way. So we want to be careful. Is
We
that
wanna care-
what you're
but I'm
saying?
saying when you look at the unserved, those are
Yeah.
issues, and we want to find ways to reduce injuries to officers, but we don't want to injure citizens. We want to reduce injury to citizens. Like I said, we want to avoid injuries to anyone if all possible. Everything we want to handle, as you stated, at the lowest possible level.
Yes.
And that's always trying to generate voluntary compliance.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, and
No, you
unfortunately, I
don't.
don't always get what I want. I would love for people to follow the instruction of the officers, recognize it's a lawful instruction, and the law expects you to do so. But when a person chooses not to follow the law
Yes.
and chooses not to do that, as law enforcement, we have to respect
Yes.
the decision that the adults make.
So the
And-
extent to which the adults in our community are willing to stand up and self-police and mind ourselves and our family and friends, the less likely you are called in to intervene. So we have to own a piece of that. And the other thing I want to appreciate that you said is no decisions are going to be made without city council and public input.
That is
And let
correct.
me just say to our viewing audience, all this gesticulation you've seen me do in the last couple minutes is you don't know there's a window over there and I'm waving to people who came into the studio to come on in. You can talk on the air. We've got some Access Initiative folks in the building that I would like to get on the air if they haven't completely disappeared. We always want to hear from the initiative that is behind this actual program. So while we're waiting for them, also around this question of belligerence
Okay.
and defensiveness. Okay, so apparently we've got to take a break. When we come back, we're
Okay.
going to talk a little bit more about resistance and belligerence so we can get on the other side of that. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The Access Initiative mission is to build a trauma and justice-informed system of care designed to create a healed community that works to ensure that youth and their families are resilient, resourceful, responsible, and restored.
And we are back. You are listening to Access Live, a community education and engagement arm of the Access Initiative. And we are here week in and week out to push for the mental health and healing of the African American community. We will never give up. And we are so pleased that some of our friends from the Access Initiative dropped in. We've got a friend here from the state who can't say much because the governor didn't give her permission, but she can at least say, honey, we just regular. So she's going to give us a word, and then our youth development professional person, right? You've got a mental health program tomorrow focusing on youth.
Yeah.
Come and take my seat, and y'all talk a little bit about what's going on before we get back to the chief. Okay, baby.
Well, as you all know, we hope you know, this month is the National Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so here in Champaign County, Access Initiative promotes Mental Health Awareness Month by hosting a list of activities throughout the week. So as a youth coordinator, my role is to do the Youth Awareness Show, which is, we've done it about 2 or 3 times. The first time it was in partnership with the Ebers Fest when they showed Louder Than a Bomb, and we had the actors come down and the youth, they did their spoken word, and then it kind of branched off into a bigger show where we had other youth performers and other youth performances. So pretty much the idea is we give the youth a microphone and a stage, and we want them to use youth voice and talk about what are the teen-related issues out there, not just mental health, but anti-bullying. They can talk about healthy or unhealthy relationships. Some people talk about self-esteem, but we want to be creative and we want to do it in a different way. So do it through poetry, do it through spoken word, do it through an instrument and visuals in the background. Some are rappers that created their own things, like Jay Toon, he's pretty known around town. We have Lamar Browning, he sings often at, I believe, Vineyard Church. Alexis, Shataya, we have quite a few youth who are lined up to perform tomorrow. It's going to be at the Fluid Events Center, which is on Country Fair Road. They're pretty new. And it is going to be from 6 to 8 p.m., excuse me. So it's a family-friendly event. Bring your friends, your family, your little cousin, and bring everyone. It's co-hosted by Hot 105.5, so Tat and DJ Mondo will be there. And we want to create a fun environment for families and friends to engage with each other, still have a positive message, and let the youth express themselves through the performing arts. So I hope to see you all there if you have any questions.
And my name is?
And my name is Ratisha Carter. I'm the Youth Engagement Specialist at the Access Initiative. If you have any more questions, you can always shoot me a phone call at 217-819-3537.
Wonderful. And greetings from the state.
Well, my name is Dr. Constance Williams, and I'm the co-principal investigator for the Access Initiative System of Care Community. And I'm here to celebrate with folks at Access as they celebrate Children's Mental Health Week, which is a part of Children's Mental Health Month. So I would say greetings, everybody. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow at the program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great. You know, we run a free-for-all around here. All you got to do is walk in the studio, and you more than likely going to get in front of the mic. But thank you so much, Constance. We're always honored when you show up to town, because you're only here to help make it good, right?
What you're doing.
Yay. Thank you. See y'all later.
Ladies.
Okay. Brother Anthony Cobb, Chief of Police for the City of Champaign. Hometown brother. Hard questions, but it's all right. Okay, so we dealt with that taser question. If anybody wants to give us a call, if we said anything that sparked your interest or imagination, give us a call at 359-9227. Chief Cobb. Oh, is that us? I believe it is. It is. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air. Can you hear us? I see his name right there. Try again. Hello, caller. Okay, caller, give us a call back. I don't know why we can't get you. He's gone. Okay, well, hopefully he'll call back, because we certainly want to hear his voice. Now, one of the other things that was very controversial when it did get passed in Champaign, and for many people has continued to be controversial, is the existence of school resource officers, or SROs, as we call them. And you mentioned that you were an SRO in Urbana, correct?
That is correct. The SRO program came in existence in the city of Urbana. I believe it's 93 or 94. I was not the first one. Actually, Troy Phillips, who's now I believe he's a master sergeant or lieutenant with the Illinois State Police, was the first school resource officer in the city of Urbana. I became the second one following him. And this is a great program. If you look at what school resource officers do and the training that they get, they're in the school for more or less 3 prongs. They're there to do a law enforcement education. They're there to be a mentor, role model, and then they're there to deal with the enforcement and the aspects of things that may happen in the building. If you look at data and records, you generally find that as school resource officers establish their program, their involvement as far as enforcement capacity always tends to decrease, and you see increase as far as the education and the interaction they do. There's a lot of positive things that happen, and it does a lot to foster and improve relationships. You can go look at our numbers since the inception of our program that we've had here in the city of Champaign. Those numbers tend to continue to decrease as far as enforcement that those officers have to do based on the positive, healthy relationships that they're developing with students and with the staff as far as working together, resolving issues, again, dealing with stuff at the lowest possible levels.
Yeah, that is important. Now, the thing that was confusing to many of us is the question of accountability. So when the discussion came to the school board and to the public, and much of the pushback from the public had to do with accountability. So we wanted to understand, you know, if you're in our schools, everybody who works in our schools works for the public and works for the school district. They're supervised by the superintendent or something, and they're accountable to the school board. But then when it comes to SROs, they're accountable to the police department because they're actual police officers.
That is correct.
Right.
They're
so,
officers.
but for many people, I must say, including myself, I'm not speaking for the Access Initiative or WBCP here. I'm speaking as a parent who was active around getting answers to these questions when it first came. So there's this concern that we can have adults who have police power in our schools, but they actually don't answer to the schools. So that's one of the pieces of controversy.
But recognize, I want to stress, recognize that anyone who's out there working in schools is accountable to somebody, period. Recognize police officers are always going to be held accountable to the chief of police.
Yes,
and there
they
is
are.
accountability, just like their teachers are held accountable to the superintendent. There's laws that allow us in the state of Illinois, if the school district chooses to, they can form their own police department if they choose to.
Well, see, that's all I'm talking about. I wasn't saying that the officers have no accountability. The issue was that we now have adults in schools who have enforcement power who are not accountable to the school district. That was considered controversial, and for many still are. But what I want to get to...
But I want to make sure you understand we are accountable to the school district. We do have contracts and we have agreements and things we're going to work out as far as how that officer will get engaged.
Yes, you have
and
a
we've
contract.
talked about those things from standard operating procedures, how we want the officers to work within the building. My expectation of our officers while they're there is that they're going to work in a collaborative effort with the building administration to make sure things are dealt with at the lowest possible level. We always defer things to the school first, and they decide if it meets their criteria where they want to push it to law enforcement.
As it has evolved. The point is, it hasn't always been that way, and I believe, under your leadership, that has improved. But what we have found is that, is that since the SROs are there, we have found certain educators then think, okay, now it's much easier to tell your folks, and this is not your fault, but in the mind of educators, I'll just send it to the SRO because I don't want to deal with that. And that's not really the intention of the program.
And it's not, and my guys are not going to be getting involved. Recognize school administration needs to deal with it. And if there's problems with educators who are not willing to deal with things that should be dealt with at school, then the administration have to deal with that. It's not for me to
I agree.
police
I'm just
their
saying
educators.
for the public.
Yeah.
The public needs to know that, and that's the reality of how the program plays itself out, though it's not the intention. So we've got a call, but I quickly, regarding SROs, wanted to share that I got a request for someone who wasn't going to be free to listen in, that they would like to see a policy that no school resource officer question a student without a parent or representative present. Is that a current policy, or can it be a current policy?
It's not a current policy, and it's kind of difficult and unrealistic to have a policy like that. We can chat and talk about it, but I mean, in essence, what you're saying is that we want, if you're under the age of 18, if as a parent, you don't want any officer to have any contact or talk with any kids unless a parent is present.
Like an interrogation.
Recognize there are rules the way we will engage and deal with young people and how we will go about it. We're always going to make the best effort to notify parents and make them aware. Sometimes parents are not accessible, and sometimes parents purposely not make themselves accessible. I'm not saying that's the case with all of them, but we want to work with parents. We just had a situation that happened too long ago where we worked with the school and the parent was contacted before any type of talking did with the kid on a significant issue.
Yes.
We always want to make sure that parents has the opportunity to be engaged and involved with things that are going on with their children. But
And that's what people want to know.
Exactly, and that's what we want to do, but recognize there are some circumstances where we may have to move. If there's a threat to a building, some type of risk of harm where could be escalating or is still ongoing, that risk is there. If I'm going to be contacting
You
parents
can't just
and
sit
deal
and
with
watch something happen,
Exactly.
certainly. But again, it's important that you know, as the chief of police, these are things the public is concerned about. So let's quickly take this call.
Okay.
Hello, caller.
How you doing, Imani?
Hey, Mr. Miller, we've got very little time, but we wanted to give you a chance to make a comment or offer a question.
Okay, I want to make a comment. One that went at the chief.
Can you turn your radio down?
Yeah, because of what was going on with the other police chief, that they had officers that not working professional in the community. Someone was using the N-word. There was so much going on with our police force, and that's how Cobb got to be police chief for Champaign. The community wanted a local person, and we aimed in his behalf, pushing points, and brought people to good chief, deputy chief over in Havana, and they should have the opportunity. But I'm going to the resource officer. We want to get like a permission step go for the parents that says that they cannot talk to my kids until I'm available. Something like that. So the kids cannot be investigated for if we can protect his rights. And I'm going to leave it like that.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us that information. You have a great afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we've had a caller let us know that there are a group of citizens who are working towards having an impact on the school resource officer program. And Chief, we have loved having you here. We think it's really important that because you want to have a transparent department, make a commitment on the air that you'll come regularly.
I have no problem with coming back and speaking with you regularly. That's not a problem.
Wonderful. Well, audience, we appreciate your attention. We know you're listening. Chief Cobb says he's available to hear your points of view, to take your comments and questions. We appreciate that. That has something to do with him being a son of Champaign-Urbana, we think. So, between now and next week, keep holding hands. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Access Live. Access Initiative is a trauma and justice-informed system of care. We're glad that you joined us today. Please join us every Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. for Access Live. Thank you and be well.